You've been sitting for 3 hours. You've checked your phone 40 times. You've opened the fridge twice knowing nothing changed. You're bored and it's mildly unbearable. Now take away the phone. Take away the fridge. Take away electricity, cities, language, agriculture. Strip it all back 50,000 years. You're sitting in a cave. It's dark. It's cold. The hunt is done. The fire is lit. You've eaten. And you have absolutely nothing to do. What happened next? Here's the thing most people get wrong about ancient humans. We picture them in a constant state of survival, running from predators, hunting mammoths, fighting rival tribes, every waking moment a battle to stay alive. But that's not how life actually works, even out there. Hunter-gatherer studies, and we still have hunter-gatherer societies today that researchers have lived alongside for decades, consistently show the same thing. Subsistence living doesn't take that long. The Kungsan people of the Kalahari, one of the most studied foraging groups in history, spend on average about 17 hours a week acquiring food. That's it. The rest is just time. Our ancient ancestors almost certainly had the same rhythm. Hunt, gather, eat, rest, and then stare at the fire for 3 hours wondering what to do next. So the question isn't whether they got bored. The question is what they did about it. Let's start with the obvious one. They talked. Not in the way we talk, quick texts, 5-minute conversations between tasks. They actually sat with each other for hours. Anthropologists who study isolated forager groups today report that a huge chunk of daily life is just conversation. Gossip, mostly. Who did what? Who said what? Who's sleeping with who? Speculation about people who aren't there. Robin Dunbar, the British psychologist who figured out that humans can only maintain about 150 meaningful relationships at once, spent years studying why language evolved at all. His conclusion was that it wasn't for hunting coordination or tool instruction. It was for social grooming. We developed complex language because we needed to talk about each other, to bond, to keep track of an increasingly complex social web. In other words, language might have evolved specifically because our ancestors were bored and needed something to fill the silence. But here's where it gets genuinely strange. About 40,000 years ago, something switched. Archaeologists call it the Great Leap Forward. Suddenly, all across Europe and Asia, humans started doing something they'd never done before. They started making things that had no practical use whatsoever. Carvings, figurines, musical instruments. The Venus of Willendorf, a small limestone statue, barely 4 inches tall, carved around 25,000 years ago. It was never used as a tool. It wasn't a weapon. It served no survival function anyone can identify. Somebody just made it because they wanted to. The Divja Babe flute is even older. Found in a cave in Slovenia, it's a bear femur with holes carved into it at precise intervals. The holes line up. Blow air across them at the right angle, and you get a scale. It's approximately 60,000 years old. Somebody sat in a cave, in the dark, and carved a musical instrument out of a bear bone. Not to attract prey. Not to signal danger. To play music. Because silence, apparently, was already something humans couldn't stand. Then there were the walls. The cave paintings at Lascaux, Chauvet, Altamira. These aren't just drawings. They're galleries. Deliberate, composed, strikingly beautiful collections of art made by people who went deep into cave systems, sometimes miles underground, carrying animal fat lamps that gave off maybe the light of a single candle. They painted horses in motion, bison with their muscles rendered in careful ochre and charcoal, hands pressed against the stone and blown around with pigment to leave a negative print. Some of those handprints are small. Children's hands. Somebody took their kid deep into a cave to make art. That's not a survival instinct. That's a parent doing something fun with their child on a slow afternoon. They also played games. We know this. The oldest confirmed game board ever found is a set of carved stone pieces discovered in Turkey, dated to around 5,000 years ago, but scratch marks consistent with game playing have been found on surfaces far older, in ancient campsites, on cave floors. Simple grids, worn smooth from repetitive use. Mancala, one of the oldest games still played today, has boards carved into stone across Egypt and Ethiopia dated back at least 7,000 years. The rules are simple. The strategy is deep. And it requires absolutely nothing to play except stones and a surface and someone across from you with time to kill. Humans invented board games roughly the same time they invented agriculture. Which says something. The moment we had a little stability, the first thing we did was sit down and try to beat each other at something. Here's the part that most history books skip entirely. They almost certainly got high. across every continent at every stage of human prehistory. There is evidence of psychoactive plant use. Peyote residue in ritual sites in Texas dated to 5,700 years ago. Cannabis seeds in burial mounds across Central Asia from 3,000 years back. Coca leaves entombed with mummies in the Andes. Poppy cultivation in prehistoric Europe. The anthropologist Andrew Weil argued in the 1970s that the desire to alter consciousness is as fundamental to humans as hunger or sex. Every culture in recorded history has independently discovered and ritualized some version of it. That kind of universal consistency doesn't appear by accident. Some of this was ceremonial, sure, but some of it was almost certainly just Friday night. And then there was the sky. No light pollution, no screens, no reason to be indoors after dark once the fire burned low. Ancient humans had the most spectacular sky in human history directly above them every single night. And they looked at it, constantly, obsessively. We know because they built entire structures around it. Stonehenge is aligned with the summer solstice sunrise. The pyramids at Giza mirror the belt of Orion. Newgrange in Ireland channels the light of the winter solstice sunrise through a narrow passage into a pitch-black chamber, precisely once a year. These weren't accidents. These were projects that required generations of observation before a single stone was placed. Somebody had to watch the sky, night after night, mapping where the stars moved, when the sun rose, where the shadows fell. For years, for decades, the people who built Stonehenge had grandfathers who watched the same horizon and took notes. That's boredom becoming obsession, becoming civilization. So here's what actually happened when ancient humans got bored. They talked about each other until language got more complicated. They carved things until art existed. They blew air across bones until music happened. They scratched patterns into rock until games were invented. They stared at the sky until astronomy was born. Boredom, as it turns out, might be the most creative force in human history. Every cave painting, every flute, every game board, every carefully aligned monument, none of it was necessary. None of it helped anyone eat or stay warm or survive another day. It all came from people who had nothing to do and couldn't stand it. Which makes you wonder about your own 3 hours on the couch, your phone checking and fridge opening, the low-level itch of an unoccupied mind looking for something to grab onto. That restlessness isn't modern. It isn't a product of screens or social media or the attention economy. It's 60,000 years old. It's the same thing that made someone pick up a bare bone in a dark cave and decide to make it sing. So the next time you're sitting there, restless, reaching for your phone for the 41st time, put it down. Just for a minute. Sit with the silence. Because that feeling you're trying to escape, that's the same itch that built every wonder of the ancient world. The question isn't what to do with your boredom. The question is what you'll make of it. So what are you going to do with your boredom, my friend?